Welcome to this edition of A Conversation With. I'm Jim Marshall of the New Bedford Cable Network, and joining us in studio after a 6-month wait or so, Victoria Grasela. She is the Vice President of Marketing and Community Engagement for the United Way. That's a long title on a business title.
It is. And if you say the full United Way of Greater New Bedford out, it's even longer.
It's gone. People are they're gone at that point.
Exactly.
Victoria's here to talk a little bit, as she did back in March, about the Hunger Commission here for the United Way. As we enter the holiday season here for the next few weeks, a lot of attention on hunger and the need for food. Interesting article recently in the paper, which I thought, and I want to make sure I read it right here too. Massachusetts has seen the highest % increase of residents facing food insecurity of all states, according to new projections released by Feeding America. The hunger rate in the state has increased 59% since 2018, representing more than 1 million people who are now struggling to get enough to eat. Mind-boggling numbers, especially right now.
Yes.
When you were back here at the start of the pandemic and talking about what you need, what did you see as far as the need? And then we'll transition to what you're seeing now.
Yeah, we had honestly no idea what to expect back in March. You know, we figured the need for food would be increased because schools were out. You know, a lot of kids are getting 2 to 3 meals at their school. You know, some schools are doing dinner as well and bringing the parents in. So we knew that there would be need with the kids home. We never expected what ended up happening, what is still happening right now. It skyrocketed. You know, what pantries typically would see in a week, in a month, they were now saying in a week, which is incredible. You know, when you go from seeing 1,000 people a month to that in a week, you just, you know, you don't even know where to start to find that food and to make sure people have what they needed. You know, when we started this out, you know, we started seeing restaurants close, and what was not great about it, I mean, they had to close, of course, but they donated a lot of their food that they knew they weren't going to use. You know, stuff that was perishable, stuff that was non-perishable that they knew they wouldn't be able to use within a few weeks. They were calling us up and donating that. So that was a nice little piece. So then we were able to stock the pantries for this uptick that happened. You know, getting into May, June, we started working with the USDA and Sid Wainer and Sons, and they were able to give us these fresh produce boxes every week that weighed about 20 pounds a piece. And so we got those out through the community from May until just recently.
And as you said, you're talking every week.
Every week. And so at the end of the day, we delivered about 41,000 boxes of these USDA boxes, which is a lot of food. And so now what we're seeing is now those boxes have ended. Where is the food coming from?
Yeah. And the numbers, so those numbers, I mean, you had even better numbers to show how many people are impacted by this right now.
Yes. So pre-COVID, the Boston Food Bank, which is part of Feeding America, it's our local one that services the entire state of Massachusetts. They reported that pre-COVID, 1 in 13 adults were struggling with hunger and 1 in 11 children. Since COVID, which you figure is just, you know, a short time that this has been around, it's 1 in 8 adults and 1 in 6 children. That's huge. And, you know, we're figuring this is going to continue to rise as cases are now increasing again, as schools may be shutting down again because of COVID, you know, spreading again.
Yeah.
And so the questions just keep going out there, like, where is this food going to come from? You know, at some point, the Boston Food Bank can only give so much out. We can only give so much out. So what's next?
Right. And you're vying for, you know, the United Way of Greater New Bedford is one of dozens of organizations across the state that's vying for food.
Dozens locally. You know, just locally, the Hunger Commission serves over 20 pantries. And that's throughout the whole South Coast, from Wareham to Fall River as well. And so think about what that looks like in the state, and we're all competing for that same food, and the numbers just keep increasing.
I know you're not built for that increase, and I remember you know, when you were here earlier, I mean, you were seeing increases even before the COVID hit. Talk a little bit about some of the challenges that you have faced over the last several months distributing food, getting donations. Have there, you know, it seems like you had some help by restaurants and whatever, but what are some of the challenges? Was it even delivering food, because you can't go to somebody's house?
Right. So it's a struggle on a couple levels. So to your point, yes, we can't go to somebody's house. That's not what we're set up for. That doesn't mean there weren't organizations doing that, but it was definitely far and few between that were doing that. So people who were diagnosed with COVID couldn't go to the grocery store. They couldn't go to a restaurant. It was tough to get to their houses. So the Massachusetts COVID team that was doing all the tracing, they were the ones that we would get calls from regularly saying, hey, could we get some food for so and so that they're in COVID, they're in quarantine. What can we do for them? And then so we would refer them out. Typically, the churches were the ones that were stepping up to fulfill that need. That that's not something that we were set up to do for sure, but that somebody was doing it. It was challenging. I mean, there were nights that I didn't sleep and that I'd wake up panicking, like, how are we going to get all this food? Because the USDA boxes were great, but there were a lot of challenges on the delivery side, just so many boxes per week. We weren't the only ones delivering it. Sid Wainer was also helping us with that. But there's just so many boxes that we were in charge of making sure they got to the right place, making sure that they were there at a reasonable time so people weren't standing there for hours waiting for these boxes.
Well, on a side note, you see, I mean, obviously in the newscast, you see the line for food.
Yes.
And I guess I'm talking across the country.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I saw the other day, and I don't even know if it's a United Way thing, but I happened to drive past on Brock Ave. There was a food distribution site, and there was like half dozen cars at 9 o'clock in the morning.
Yes.
And I mean, this was a little truck. It wasn't a big distribution, but
we thought that a lot. So that one specifically is a pace run mobile market that's happening, that has been happening all summer.
Okay.
So we would see this. At one point we were going out. We have our mobile market we do every year with the Sharing the Harvest Farm, where all their product that they're growing, they donate to us and we give out. This year we expanded it to include some of these USDA boxes. So every Monday night we went to a different part of our service area and we handed out 300 boxes. We would start at about 5:30, and by 4:30 we'd have a line down the street. There were some communities when we'd go to them, the cops would show up and say, hey, we got to get this line off the street. Can you start early? So we would do our best to go as quick as we can, get these boxes out. And the need just kept coming. And, as the summer went on, the lines got longer. We ended up turning people away at some of these. And it's an awful feeling to not be able to service everybody that is in line. Because if you're getting in line, for some people that it's not easy to say, hey, I need help. And so they were still doing that.
When you talk about a box and it's once a week,
yes.
Theoretically, how long does that food last? Is it a week? I guess it depends on your family size.
It depends on the size of the family. Truthfully, when the boxes first started and they were just the produce, you were getting a bag of onions, a bag of apples, a bag of oranges, a bag of lemons. There was some stuff in there that maybe your family's not eating. And I don't know about you, Jim, but we wouldn't use a bag of lemons a week. So then you have some stuff that just now is piling up in your house that maybe you're not using and maybe going bad, honestly, just sitting there. And produce is only so sustainable. It's only going to last
You've
so long.
You've talked about non-perishable versus perishable.
Yes, and so these
boxes
boxes
issue.
Were solely perishable items, and so if you weren't using them within that week, chances are they were going bad.
Yeah.
I mean, some of it would stay good a little bit longer, depending if you were, refrigerating it, of course, storing it properly. But some of it would go bad, and sometimes when we get the boxes, like, of course, you get the rotten apple here and there, so that things difficult. You can never pinpoint when that's going to happen. In the phase 2 of the boxes, they started putting milk and milk, some dairy. It was usually like a cottage cheese, a yogurt, something like that, and then meat. And so again, you have to make sure you have the storage for it. Not all people do have a good size refrigerator or freezer space for it. And not all the stuff that was coming was nutritionally, high in content. Some of them were getting baby back ribs, and that's great, but not everybody's going to eat that.
Nice
and then they were covered in some kind of sauce or something that not everybody's going to eat. So it's tough when you do something like that. They want to make it consistent across the board. And hopefully, if your family wasn't able to use it, you would take those items and give it to your neighbor or your cousin or whoever it may be. And so that's our hope, is that that's how it got out there. But you never know.
Yeah.
We're sure that some of it didn't go in the right place. That's why it's nice to have the non-perishables that we ask for all year. The things like the mac and cheese, rice, peanut butter. Those are things that, number one, that kids are going to eat. The stuff in these boxes is great for adults. Kids aren't eating that. They'll pick up the apple, they'll pick up the orange, but they're not going to pick up the zucchini in most houses.
Chances are I'm not either, but that's okay. Did you find did it get easier though, because you're doing trial by error?
It is, yeah. We didn't know what we were doing.
Right. So has it? I don't want to say it's gotten easier, but has the distribution aspect of it gotten easier?
It did get easier. I mean, at this point now it has ended. You know, the hope is that at some point USDA will re-up this program, because what we found is now that it's over, now what? You know, that keeps coming back up in a lot of the calls I'm on about food is, you know, people were relying on these boxes. And so, yeah, distribution by the end got easier, but now the new questions have arisen, and so now it's a whole different set of challenges.
We were talking to Victoria Grasela from the United Way here of Greater New Bedford. This is the time of year you usually come in and talk about.
Yes, our Thanksgiving
it's
and
fall,
holiday
it's,
efforts.
you know, Thanksgiving, Christmas. This is the time when people, donations are front and center. Is that helpful in this situation?
You know what it is. It will be definitely helpful. We have seen the numbers rise from year over year for Thanksgiving. Typically our requests from our food pantries that we service with the Hunger Commission, we usually get a request for about 800 turkeys, and then the 1,000 meals that we package at our Hunger Heroes event that we do each year. This year, my requests had doubled. And so we are doing our best to fulfill that need, but we only have, you know, so many funds for it. We only can hit up the same donors so many times. And so this food is definitely needed right now. You know, the boxes have stopped. Our pop-up pantry has stopped because our food comes from the Dartmouth Y, who, you know, they can only grow so long in the year, and they're at the point where they're no longer growing. And a lot of the other mobile markets that were happening are in the same boat where now they've stopped because everything stopped. And so now people are in need of the food again. So Thanksgiving, you know, it is one day, but I think it's nice to have that normalcy for a change.
And you guys extend to the Christmas season too, because people are looking
for. Well into Christmas.
I mean, you're year round, I get it, but I know that there's efforts right through the holiday season.
Absolutely. We, you know, even year round, Jim. I mean, we're always collecting food. We are encouraging. You know, local businesses or friends and family that want to do something. You can do a food drive at any time during the year. We're happy to take that food in and get it out to who needs it. And the holidays just really elevate hunger, and people really notice it a little bit more. And that's the time where, like you said, they want to give back more, and they know that it's needed. This year, more than anything, I would say that is the case. You know, we are going to need more food. The need is much higher than it's ever been. So, you know, we'll start with Thanksgiving, we'll get out what we can, and then we'll move quickly into Christmas and do the same thing.
I want to ask, kind of back to distribution briefly. Was it harder, or is it harder for somebody, and I'm just saying in Acushnet, where there's less people but there's less options, versus somebody in New Bedford where there might be more locations to get help? Is it harder in the city versus the rural areas?
It is, mainly because in New Bedford, that's where all the food pantries are. You know, there are the outliers, you know, in Dartmouth, in Acushnet, in Fairhaven, but the majority of the food pantries are in New Bedford. So it's a challenge if you don't have transportation. You know, you might have to find somebody to carpool with you. You know, the bus services, or the schedule's a little different because of COVID, and maybe people don't want to take public transportation. So there is that barrier of having that if you are in a rural town. That's why when we did the USD boxes in our pop-up, we made sure we hit every one of our service areas. You know, we went to Freetown, we went to Acushnet, and we wanted to make sure that everybody in our service area was taken care of, at least for a little bit. You know, we're hoping that, you know, a lot of the local churches, and I know this is true in most towns. I know we work very closely with a church in Freetown who, you know, is servicing the folks that live out there. So hopefully, you know, every community has somebody that's kind of taken charge, and we're doing our best to serve as many people as we can, all the pantries we can, but we only have so much capacity too.
Have you seen, do you have numbers? I'm curious as to how, as you were talking about before, how many families perhaps you serve, like in a given month or what have you? I don't even know if that's a stat.
It's hard to say. I mean, with our mobile markets, we have numbers that we can compare. With our everyday deliveries to food pantries, we're not the ones collecting those numbers. It's the food pantries that are collecting the numbers, so it's hard to say. I mean, I can tell you the increase in the numbers. So in 2019, we delivered 338,000 pounds of food the whole year.
Okay.
Right now in 2020, not even through the full year, this number is from October, we're over 1 million pounds.
3 times that.
So the amount that's coming in and us getting out, we are doing whatever we can to get stuff out. We're trying to get stuff in. We started new partnerships. You know, some of this number is that USDA number. Some of it is different companies that have wanted to do more. So like a Blount soup out of Fall River, we're working with them right now to get soup out to the community. You know, so they have you know, a good stock, and we pick up once a week, and then we get it out to the food pantry. So people are getting soup, which is perfect timing. Winter is, you know, right on us. It was, you know, a couple weeks ago, and then
so what do you know, people, I guess some people watching might have their perception of who needs help, but it's probably not what they think right now.
It's so different right now. You know, people are out of work. You know, people are still not back to work. There's so many of those factors. You know, kids are home from school. Maybe they've made the choice to stay remote. And so that's 1 meal or 2 meals or 3 meals that you weren't counting on now to feed your child. And so it's a different, it's definitely a different demographic that is now going to food pantries and getting these additional services that weren't in the past. You know, it could be the average family who is just worried about sending their children to school, so one parent has opted to stay home while the other goes to work.
Yeah.
It could be the case of a single mom who is working, but now the kids can't go to grandma's house because they're worried about, you know, her catching something, and so now mom's trying to work less hours to be home with the children. And so it's completely changed from where it was.
And these are people, you know, these are families or people are middle class who have never needed help.
Yes. And, you know, and it's true that we get calls all the time from people who say to us, we don't know where to start. We don't know where to get this food. We don't know where to go. You know, what do I have to show up with? Because every pantry is different too. Things did relax a little bit during the high season of the summer when kids were home for so long.
Right, yeah.
And so pantries did relax what they needed you to bring with you. But typically you need to bring a photo ID, proof of who's in your residence so they know how many people they're serving. And, you know, depending on the pantry, depends on what you need to bring with you. So some people didn't even know where to start. So a lot of our calls were just, where do I go? What do I do? What do I start, you know? So if it was somebody with a family with a child 18 or under, we'd refer them to our Family Resource and Development Center, where, you know, chances are if you need food, you need something else too. So they would work with you with a family support worker and say, hey, do you need help with the rent? Here's maybe how we can help you with their rent through what we had was the Help United Fund, or, you know, maybe it wasn't United Way being able to help, maybe it was another organization like a PACE where they could help you, you know, with heating assistance or something along those lines. So we would work very closely with families to get them where they needed to be. If they didn't have children, we knew which resources to send them to, you know, so we didn't turn anybody away. We talked people through what they possibly would need.
I would assume too that the elderly community, people living by themselves, who are also the high risk category, those pose extra challenges.
So this is where it got really tricky too over the summer, because, you know, those USDA boxes were not good for a single elderly person living by themselves. You know, there was really too much food for them, and so it would rot unless they were hopefully sharing it, like I said before. But it brought challenges for them. You know, they needed this produce too, but they just couldn't use it all. So it really wasn't ideal. And USDA was really about serving a family of, you know, X number of people or more. So it wasn't ideal for that either. But a lot of them weren't going to the grocery store. They weren't, you know, they're not going out at all. You know, my parents are a good example. Like, I'm doing the grocery shopping because they are older, they have, you know, risk factors. And so I want to keep them home and I want to keep them safe. And I'm sure, you know, a lot of people out there are thinking the same thing and doing the same thing. And so it's tough. And I know Coastline Elderly, you know, they've been wonderful and they do Meals on Wheels. And I know that their numbers increase significantly. So people who may have been going to the Council on Aging for lunches were now getting it delivered instead. And so it's just a whole new world that we've all had to navigate. But I do think there are people who probably we've missed along the way. And I would say, you know, if anybody's watching and they have been missed, please call our office. We can help you find the right place. You can also dial Mass 211 at any point in time. It's just like dialing, you know, 411 for information. You pick up the phone, dial 211, tell them where you are, and then they'll give you the resources that are local to you. Because I can also tell you that we get calls from people who are not in New Bedford, and I'm not sure how to help them other than to send them to 211, because I know in Greater New Bedford, I don't know Greater Fall River. I don't know all those resources. So
talk about the donation aspect right now, because this is a time where people physically give you items. And I mean, you briefly talked a little bit about, you know, there's really only a certain amount of things that are really should be donating food-wise. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I mean, everybody wants to get involved, and we encourage it as much as possible. You know, right now is when we do a ton of food drives because it is the holiday season. Sometimes, though, we do like to say that it's better if you do give a cash donation or, you know, credit card or however you want to do that, just because we're able to buy in bulk. We can get better pricing on things than you could at the local grocery store. You know, when I'm ordering a pallet of stuffing versus, you know, the boxes in the store, I'm definitely getting a better price. So if you make a donation to us through the Hunger Commission, you know, it is going out to buy those items that we need to supplement what the pantries are in need of the most. And of course, there's a specific list of foods that are better to have in there. You know, things like soup, of course, as we go into the winter, that's canned is always great. Mac and cheese, rice, potatoes.
Pasta.
Pasta, those heartier things that, again, kids are willing to eat,
Right.
and that, you know, they don't go bad right away. You've got some good, stable life on them. And so that's what I would say. You know, if you're interested in getting involved, you know, host a drive, go onto our website, make a donation, so that way we can get people fed and we can make sure that we're getting the most we can out into the community.
Because you still need to buy the non-perishables, but you can only buy them.
Right. Because if you're buying milk to donate,
It's gotta come out that
that's going to
day.
go bad instantly. You know, we're able to then buy these perishable items and you know, get them out all at once when we can put that delivery schedule in place and not have it sit around. You know, storage is it's a big issue locally. It's a conversation I have almost on a daily basis at this point, that we're trying to find some kind of facility locally where we can do more refrigeration, more freezer space, and be able to bring more of that stuff in.
One of the things, too, that I'm curious about is, I mean, you mentioned a couple times the Greater Boston Food Bank, but and you said they're basically the hub for
Yes.
Massachusetts. But there's only so much, because you're vying for
Yes.
food with, I mean,
Everybody's
the
going
United
for
Way
that same-
of Salem
yes.
or what
Yep.
have you. I mean, you're
Yep.
vying for the same. So it's some. I mean, their numbers must be
Their
staggering.
numbers are skyrocketing, and truthfully, like during the summer, there were points where they didn't have enough variety, you know. So somebody, I gave you the example before we came on air that, you know, somebody ordered a truckload of food and ended up with a truckload of peaches, and that only goes so far.
Right. I was looking at the plus.
I know you were, but the average family, you know, you were saying peach cobbler, which sounds amazing right
Peaches
now.
and
So
ice
if
cream.
you want to go ahead and whip me one of those up, that'd be great. But you know, the average family might not have those
Right.
additional ingredients. You know, so peaches are great; they're nutritional, but you can only eat so many peaches in one sitting. You don't want that 3 meals a day, and there's no protein in that, things like that. So you're not getting all the nutrients that you do need. So it became this struggle on all ways with the food bank. You know, they've done an amazing job keeping up as best they can.
And how do they determine? Is it percentage-wise? Is it?
The pantries are the ones they place an order with the food bank, and then the food bank does their best to fulfill whatever that order is. But there may be some days that they get more meat, less non-perishables. It's this influx. It depends on what they're getting in from their partners with Feeding America and companies across the country. So you never really know what you're going to get. It's kind of a toss-up.
We got a few minutes left, but I want to make sure we touch upon the fact that while all this is going on and you're dealing with it, you're also dealing with your annual campaign,
Yes.
which is helpful on so many different levels with so many different organizations and just issues that you have to tackle.
Yes.
And this is a whole new ball game as far
It
as
is.
your campaign.
Yeah, it's been an interesting year. You know, typically we kick off our campaign in September, and it got delayed a little bit. We didn't kick off until October. The challenges this year are much different than anything we've ever faced in the past. You know, typically we go into a workplace, we do a nice presentation, we have a video we show, and then folks make their donation based on what they want to give. This year it's so different because some people are still working remote. Some companies are half remote, half in person, but they can't have anybody in. So we're doing campaign presentations via Zoom. We have electronic pledge forms. It's just a whole new thing for us, and so we're relearning how to do our jobs. And it's totally separate from the Hunger Commission. You know, the money that comes in through the campaign, while it could be donated to hunger relief, you know, we also need that money for other basic needs, you know, education, you know, health, financial stability. Those are all programs that we support in the community, whether it's through our own programming or other nonprofits in the area. And so we still need to raise those dollars to make sure that we can continue, you know, after school programming for your kids. You know, at some point we will go back to where we were, or somewhat near where we were.
Right.
And those programs are so needed. That need didn't change. So the campaign, more than ever is going to make a huge difference this year. So, if you are getting one of these pledge forms at your work, we ask that you give. We ask that you make some kind of donation. You can do it through payroll deduction, the one-time gift. But that all just helps, everybody in the community be stronger and get those resources they need.
And we were talking too that a lot of the people who donate traditionally are the middle class people
Yes.
who don't give a lot, but you and I were kind of sitting there just doing the math. If everybody, if you did the payroll deduction and you got paid weekly and gave $1 a week, and a lot of people did that, the monies would add up.
It would add up very quickly, yeah. So any little bit helps. You always hear people say that, but it's really true. If you amplify it by, if I gave $1, you gave $1, and 100 other people gave $1 a week, we'd do pretty well. You can think of it as that could be, 20 kids get to go to an after-school programming to, help further their education. You got to look at it that way too.
Right. I want to make sure you have time to
Yes.
talk, to give your information out, how to contact you. I don't know if the food bank is sort of different than just the United Way when you're
It
talking
is,
about
yeah.
the campaign.
Yep. So if you're interested in donating food, you can go right onto our website. It's unitedwayofgnb.org. So Greater New Bedford is the GNB. And right on there, there's the donate page. And you'll see the difference between there's the hunger page, and then there's the general donate to the campaign. Either is super appreciated, especially now, like I said, as the need continues to increase and go up, and we anticipate that continuing to grow, honestly. And then if you wanted to donate food, and host a food drive at your company, or again with your friends and family in your neighborhood, you can reach out to our office and we could set you up with it. We'll give you posters, we'll give you bins, we'll make sure everything's taken care of, make it as easy as we can for you, along with that list of items that are most needed.
We talked about before too, which was interesting, the people who don't even know the things that you do. So if, and based on my experiences, I know families like, well, I don't even know, in a sense, that the United Way exists. How do people get in touch with folks if they need help?
Yeah. So if you need help, the best way to start is 211. Just dial 211. Like I said before, you would call them, they'll ask where you are, they'll ask what your needs are, and they'll point you in the right direction. Other ways that if you need help, you're welcome to call our office at any point in time. Call our family center. We're certainly able to point you in the right direction if we can't help you. We can direct you to the local food pantries if that is what you're in need of. We can let you know, which is open what day and what time, because they're all over the place and they're all different. So you can always call our office at 508-994-9625, and that way we can steer you from there.
Sounds good. It's good seeing you again.
Great seeing you.
We wish you
Thanks for having
happy
me.
holiday season.
Thank you.
And keep up the good work that you guys are doing.
Thank you.
That's going to do it for this edition of A Conversation with Victoria Grasela, my guest, and I thank her for coming in, and we will talk to you again soon. Thanks for watching.